Welcome to the Mindful Muscle Podcast. My name is Paul Klingen, and I am your host. I left a career at Amazon in 2018 to help people live healthier lives. Mindful Muscle is the balance between pushing harder to hit your fitness goals while also being able to slow down. We'll talk all things training, nutrition, and recovery, while also highlighting the importance of mindfulness, slowing down, and taking care of mental health and performance. You'll hear from doctors, authors, athletes, coaches, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders in the health and wellness space. And you'll hear from me as an athlete, trainer, nutrition, and personal performance coach as I share my thoughts and experiences that are helping my clients and myself get better each and every day. What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Mindful Muscle Podcast, a competitor's guide to mental health and mastery. My name is Paul Klingen, and today we got Joe Mike Paul. 3 first names, all wrapped in one. He's the founder and owner of True North Nutrition Co. The guy loves coffee, mountains, dogs. We talk all things nutrition, coaching, and how to help you get the best results. A lot of really cool mindset frame hacks that you can apply to nutrition. I don't like hacks. I'm going to rewind there and say approaches, because we're not hacking anything, right? We are still following the same principles. We're not circumnavigating that. But anyway, I digress. Really excited for this podcast. This guy's awesome. He's got a ton of really good energy. We have a lot of same philosophies on how important it is to slow down and have a balance of the go, 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 and the slow, 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 the light side, the dark side, the yin, the yang, everything in between. So here we go. Without further ado, Joe Mike Paul. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. I know I did. What's up, Joe Mike Paul? Thanks for coming on the podcast. Super excited to have you on, connect, and just jam, man. What's going on?
Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate the invite, and kind of like we were chatting before, I'm excited to chat with you a little bit more in depth because obviously we've had the pleasure of getting to know each other a little bit, but now we get to dive in and flow and talk about some topics and maybe nerd out on some stuff as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So just for a little bit of background, I connected with Joe through a lot of mutual people in the fitness industry. We're in a similar coaching group. And so I was just like, man, like we got to get on a podcast. We got to jam so I can get to know you better, but also learn a lot from you, right? And what you do with True North and what you do with clients. And then also personally, recently, you just got absolutely shredded, right? I can see the dimples in your cheeks. You look like Governor Tarkin right now. Star Wars reference. Anyone who gets that, tag me and let me know that you're also part of the crew. But let's just start there, man. Like, what was that experience like getting photo shoot ready? And then after we do that, we can talk about what was the kind of the catalyst for you getting into what you do as a profession, as a coach, things you see with clients. We can nerd out beyond there.
Right on. Awesome. I'm super excited about that. And yeah, to dive right into it as far as getting photo shoot ready. So I started with my coach in November, and it was, it's always funny. Like I'll get people on like calls, personally, and they'll be like, hey, like this holiday is coming up and should I get started after that holiday? And I'm always like, all right, if you're ready to commit, there's no better time than right now. Right. And so for me, I was like started on, I think like literally the Friday before Thanksgiving. And then we were like planning my cut for literally New Year's Day. So just like so cliche, like 2021 New Year's going into the cut. And then I think we ended up being 13 weeks in a deficit. And it was like, I've prepared for photo shoots before, but mostly like just on my own, pretty like, I eat mostly like higher calorie because I was mostly doing CrossFit before for any other photo shoots. So it's pretty easy to just kind of like change up training a little bit and modify calories. I cycled down and good. This time I was like, I got pretty peeled, and it was awesome. I would say like the first 8 weeks was not like it wasn't hard, but it was very like doable. In the last like 4 to 5 weeks, definitely challenge grew a lot.
Yeah. So I work with a lot of different people in person, online, but I'll in person, I'll be operating out of a CrossFit gym, right? So I see like a lot of people getting after it a lot of the same way you do. And just through different people that I'll talk to in the industry to listen to, one of the biggest things that people do is undereat, right? And in a deficit, obviously you have to undereat, but was there anything that you had to do differently to make sure that you were able to still sustain your performance on that side?
That's a good question. So for me, a little bit more background too is that when I played college football, I had a very, very poor relationship with food. And I, in high school as well, just like we can dip into that more later or whatever, but just really poor relationship with food. So I was always coming from a place of eating enough. So that's, as you know, as any coach knows, it's very individualized, right? And so for me, it was much more about like this this specific time. What for me was about continuing to build that relationship with food. What I noticed with CrossFitters in general is typically it's going to be under eating, but a lot of times it's that cycle. In my experience, is that restrictive cycle. So either completely under eating or restricted and then massive binges and those snowball weekends.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive a little bit into your background. I think that'll set us up for things in the future. You mentioned playing college football. What position were you playing?
So I kind of floated around. If this will be the theme of everything you ever ask me, is like I feel like I just always kind of like float between the different positions. But started at wide receiver, went to running back, and then my senior for 2 years, and then my senior year I played linebacker.
Okay. And then where are you from? Were you going to school in an area where you grew up or different state?
Yeah, so I grew up in the Milwaukee area of Wisconsin. West Bend is a little like town north of Milwaukee, and then I went to school at Concordia, so Division III football in Mequon out on the lake. And yeah. So started playing football high school. Then I went there for college, where I studied English and fell in love with football and sports, and then ended up heading down that fitness route.
Did you do anything with the English degree?
I mean, I write every single day. I mean, you know as well as I do too what it's like in terms of content. Like you make a ton of great content in with your videos, with your social media. Like you're writing every day, and so it's been a much different style of writing. Whereas that was very formal. You do have to learn how to research, which has been huge in being an evidence based nutritionist. That I'm able to, successfully and appropriately like interpret research. But then the hardest part that I've had to learn is that translation, because I want to talk to someone where they understand, not like lofty research lingo or jargon.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure you're pretty good with like the yours and the twos and the hours and all that stuff. I'm just playing, but it is important. So
Yeah.
then you're playing football. You mentioned a little bit about just their relationship with food with school. And when I look back and when I was playing sports in college, it was really just like eat when you were hungry, drink when it was time to drink. Like, what were you doing as an athlete that either created really bad habits or habits that you still have that serve you?
So I think it kind of started with like, I mean, I was a football player, but I truly fell in love with the weight room. Like I was just like that about it. And when in college football, right, like 80 to 90% of what you do as a team is done in the weight room, right? So I knew that I had to eat big to get big. So a little bit more context, I was a German exchange student in high school, and I actually lost 15 pounds over there just because my eating habits had changed so much. I wasn't really working out. And then I had to put that weight back on for my senior year of football. Then I put an additional 15 to 20 pounds on somewhere in there my freshman year of football, like after the freshman season. And so that's when they were like, okay, let's move you to like a bigger football player position, like running back. And then I put on another 10 pounds my senior year for at linebacker. So like, as you can imagine, one, you're in the college scenario, right? Where it's like, you're already like, I gained a freshman 15, but like I filled out my pads like super well. But I called it my pizza a day diet, man. I was just smashing pizzas, and you know, weekends were a huge booze fest for me. And like, that was just the reality. That was kind of where I came from. And then by my senior year, kind of settled down and I started to kind of like get a little bit more even keeled.
Yeah, that's super funny. I'm picturing your coach as being like, oh, our center's out. Like, Joe, you think you can eat a little bit? Beef up a little bit? Like, we need someone on the line ASAP.
I'm on a coach. Like,
Yeah, on 2 pizzas a day. That's super interesting because I remember looking back in or not at high school, but college, just like all the dumb things that I thought were true from a nutritional standpoint. And you'll get people who are just like, oh, I can't put on size or I can't, get big. And it's just, it's really the law of thermodynamics. And if people understand that, it's really, I think, a game changer. But talk a little bit about like post college, right? So as an
Sure.
athlete, post college, now you're doing what? Like when we want to get to when you started True North, but I know that there's a little bit of time in between that.
Yeah. So to connect the dot, I mean, we'll go through it. So like following school, right? I was just kind of like on the job search, but still at the same time, just kind of like unsettled with. It was almost like, and I feel like a lot of college football players get this, and a lot of or athletes, right? A lot of college athletes in general. I won't just keep it to football, but kind of feel like there's something left in the tank when you're done. A lot of times, and so for me, I was like still looking for that, and when you take that time after college to after you graduate, like first off, after football was over, I had like 20 something credits to get done in the next like semester and then winter rim, and I was just like all about that and all about full-time work. And then that was like kind of like a 5 month break from training really hard, and I was like, okay, I'll just go right back to it. And as you can imagine, that went absolutely horribly. And I would usually spend my day, go to the gym, do my old football workouts that I used to do, and still just try to keep that lifestyle that just doesn't work when you haven't been doing it for 6 months. And so I would end up, getting sore, getting hurt, those sorts of things. And I would call that like sort of the vicious cycle over the next 2.5 years. And it kind of like really hit when I had this like Christmas picture of me, and I'm just like I'm just like thick with like 3 C's. So it wasn't like, it was just like, for me, it just looked so, it didn't feel real. Um, and then at that time, like literally right around the time of that picture is when I had picked up CrossFit, and I was doing that mostly part time. And then like I was, as far as job, I was bartending, carpentry, and then coaching classes. And then at that time, then I went into the National Guard, and that came into the picture. And so we kind of have some of those shifts. And then like just to like cap off that timeline, when I came back from the National Guard, got a full-time CrossFit coach job, and then I started launching the coaching, online coaching side of things.
Okay, cool. What year was that?
I enlisted in the Guard in 2015, no, 2016, and then the business kicked off the following summer.
Okay, cool. Was there any apprehension to doing that? What was kind of the catalyst for the business and making that leap?
So the business was more or less just like, my dad was a business owner. I don't play well with bosses, I guess, to put it, frankly, and that's just a truth that I had to come to terms with. And I had to have a lot of conversations with my current employer at that time. It's really unique because I feel really, really like confident as a soldier, where like you very clearly have supervisors and stuff like that. But within the civilian world, I'm like, nope. Like, I like doing my thing. I like calling my shots, and it just kind of bloomed from there. Not really sure. I just started, like, we needed a nutrition coach at the gym, and he be my employer, just kind of let me build it from there. It wasn't a great deal, and I'm if anyone's listening to this and wondering if that's a good deal for them, it's probably not. But I'm happy to talk about it with anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I look back at some of the mistakes that I made when I first started, or like the deals that I did. I used to buy a new clients. Still am a Lululemon ambassador, but I'd recently become a Lululemon ambassador, and I thought like this was the ticket. So I would buy people Lululemon's tank tops, so like $70 tank tops, put my logo across it, and then when they signed on as a client, I gave that to them. This is personal training. People would do like 2 workouts, and then I would never see them again. And here
Yeah.
I am, I'd like given them this. I have like one person that I still trained from that 2 years ago, but that was like a $1,500 mistake that I could not afford to make. And in a way, I kind of look forward to 10 years from now being like, wow, Paul, you were an idiot. Good for you for making those mistakes, because that is, you gotta just fail and learn. So I think that is an interesting way to segment into what you do now, though, and the common people that you work with, or the common problems that they have, right? If you're working in a CrossFit facility, I'm guessing you're working with a lot of CrossFit athletes. Is there anything else that you find that is really common with the people that you work with?
Definitely the people that I work with are always going to have this edge of performance. So I like to call them lifestyle athletes. Like that's how I truly understand it and communicate. But it's going to be primarily CrossFitters. And if you're not in a CrossFit gym, you're probably in some sort of like powerlifting. They're like a hybrid athlete gym, right? Which are usually wear the face of like a powerlifting gym, and usually you're a former college athlete, or you were just always into sports. So a lot of times, and like getting down to personality type too, it's a lot of type A people, super driven, and oftentimes like, and this happens all the time with CrossFitters, like just always in overdrive. And so that's one of my favorite parts. I get chills talking about it because I'm a holistic performance coach, and that holistic piece of it is so important. It's like it's that missing piece that people like to, like, they crave it, but they don't know how to like stay badass, overdrive type A, like CrossFitter, and also be little yogis and just
Yeah.
recovered and that
I
sort of
think
thing.
I think this is why we jam and connect so well. Is that was for me kind of a catalyst for my business, where it was down dog athletics, and I love this idea of a dark side and a light side, and being able to like push really hard as an athlete, but then pull back and slow down and be introspective and reflective, and have the ability to expand your spectrum and be okay slowing down, and then be able to turn it on and go 100 miles an hour. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
100%, man. I always, the way like I compartmentalize it is dualities always. And I think that's like exactly how you explained it. Light, dark, intro, would you say introspective, and what was the other one?
Introspective, and I'd just say like
I don't know. You were just
master it.
flowing. You were just
Yeah.
flowing. Yeah. But yeah, dualities. That's how I see it.
Okay. So what is like the duality that then like a CrossFit athlete or a type A power lifter, strongman, like how do you get them over to that side?
For me, the big key, when I say for me, I really do mean my clients. They're so inclusive in my life. You know this just as well. Like, you care about your clients that way. But what it means is truly embodying that time in silence. It's just, I just keep it super simple. And what that can be for you is very, very different. But even myself, I'll catch myself like, man, I've had my earbuds in or music on or something for literally the 15 hours I've been awake today. You need time in silence. And maybe it's meditation. Maybe it's, if you're experienced enough, you can do your own like yoga flows and that sort of thing. And then otherwise, literally just like breath work. And so I work those things in for people, and then walking, because as a type A person, more driven, even if you're not type A, just like getting your mind off of like what's in your living room and what's in front of you here. It's like, get out where there's space.
Yeah, and disconnecting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
100%.
that's super interesting. So then that is separate from the nutrition then, right? Or would you consider
It's
that kind of the same bucket?
in terms of like service, or in terms of like,
Just like when you're coaching people, like
yeah,
they understand like, all right, like we gotta eat a little bit more, or we gotta eat a little bit less of this. But then is that a different conversation that you're having with them, where it's like, hey, there's also this really cool side that if you dive into, everything else works together much better.
that's honestly, that has to happen on call one for me a lot of times. I mean, there are some people where they're just like bought in. They're like, I'm going to do whatever it takes. And still, usually, like, that's the hard part, because I get it. Like, for me, there's like a couple of keywords I'm looking for on a sales call. Like, if I'm being sold to, and I already know my decision ahead of time, and a lot of people do ahead of time. But I'm looking for those keywords, and so making sure that we understand that there has to be, like, there's an accelerator, but part of using the accelerator is also being, really familiar with all the gears. And for CrossFitters, for my clients, they're usually stuck up there in fourth and fifth gear and whipping corners in third. And if anyone who hasn't driven stick shift or a motorcycle, maybe you're missing this metaphor, but you got to spend time in that first and second gear, or even neutral, just to reboot and be able to actually accelerate. And so a really good way that I explain this to people, there's a couple of different ways that I try to like help people envision this is one, there's 10 things that I try to have you doing every single day. The way I say it is, if you do most of these things, most days, most of the time, you are going to see success. And they're just general lifestyle guidelines. And then from there, we just work on what it takes to build those into the routine. Yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool. So of those 10 things, wait, what would those be? Is it unique per person?
It is. So execution is, but for me, it's not unique per person, but it's divided. So where I started was like, okay, you have sleep, diet, and stress. These are three things that must be considered for every single person who's going to see results and keep them. Because I had enough clients and I was that coach too. I was a macro coach, right? At one time. And it was like, here are your macros. Let's go. Here's how you lose weight. And honestly, I didn't like it at all. And I felt I was doing more therapy sessions anyway. And that was something I led myself into. But then getting the better training and understanding how to communicate better as I grew as a coach, it came through, okay, these are the 10 lifestyle things. So I break them down with sleep. It's caffeine, hygiene, and routine. Within diet, I talk about a quantity-based, quality-focused approach, which is broken down into quantity, quality, hydration, and fiber. And then the last category is your stress or input, which I always review with everyone, and that is matter, mindset, and movement.
What do you mean by matter?
So that's literally what matters to you,
Got it.
and non-negotiables. That's what most of us are familiar with. But
So like work,
part of say it again.
like your
No,
job.
no. So this would be like that would be more of the like counter, right? So what I try to communicate
Got
to
it.
everyone is like, okay, if you're going to work for 8 hours, I need you to have this duality, this opposing force.
Yeah.
It's not 8 hours of meditation, but maybe it's 10 minutes of walking with no headphones.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And that's actually something I talk a lot with clients as well, where I'm like, you have all these sympathetic inputs. What are your parasympathetic inputs, right? So you got your fight with your fiance, you got your work, you got your no sleep, you got your training session, you're trying to be in a diet. Where's your like massage? Where's your meditation? Where's your walk in nature? Where's your painting, right? You don't have to paint, but it's like these inputs that help balance out. And it's not going to be 50-50, right? We can't just lay on a beach for 8 hours. Everyone talks about work-life balance. A pound of bricks and a pound of feathers. It's going to be a different volume with those, but it's the quality of to what you're talking about, matter, mindset, movement, to where that's really solid. It can hold space for the other 9 hours or whatever amount of hours you want to say, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I love that too. I love that the vision with the bricks and the feathers as well. But that's just a big thing where it's like inputs and outputs. I
Yeah.
mean, you
Why do
can
you
keep
why do you
that
think it's
simple.
so important? And I agree with you. I love that you have the quantity and the quality, right? We're looking at nutrition principles that exist in any diet and moving away from macros and being like, hey, we need food quantity to be where it needs to be. We need quality to be there. I think you said hydration and then fiber. I love how fiber is like it's got its own thing, which is solid.
Yeah.
What do you feel like just focusing on macros or just focusing on hitting an arbitrary, like very restrictive diet? What do people lose when they follow that? And what do they gain when they have a little bit of a different perspective?
It's a good question, and sometimes you have to like sometimes a lot of times what I'll get is people that have experience with macros, which is good because then I can be like, okay, that's what happened last time, and here you are, seeking help again, and it's not in the case of like, hey, just like tune me up, help me out. It's like no, like I feel like shit. I want a better life, and usually that's the sort of statement that I'm looking for. It's not just like it's not something plain like I want to lose weight. Like it's like I want to lose weight because or but or whatever it is. And obviously, too, is like you want to seek that from whoever is going to work with you. But um, as far as it goes, like if you've never done macros before, I'm going to push you. Like it's going to be uncomfortable a little bit at the beginning because I want you to urgently get there because the clients that I do have that have done macros before, the way that I explain to them is like, hey, that's the minimum you do on this is following macros. These lifestyle guidelines, and the macro, like that's the minimum. That's the expectation. Everything else is going to be us leveling up your life in a way that absolutely makes your goal statement come true. Because at the end of the day, whatever weight you see on the scale, whatever results you see, it's not going to mean anything if it doesn't have like a purpose attached to it. Right. Just like me and my photo shoot, like for me, it was the accomplishment of doing it and then having some badass pictures to use for my content for my website. So there was like purpose there.
Yeah. And to your point, there's there's so much more to health than just the scale, right? We can dive into biofeedback and metabolism and, get nerdy with the science there. And there's a lot of things where I could say like, all right, why does caffeine matter, right? Why does sleep matter? But if you're like the macros is just a part of it, but unless all these other things are being checked, it's a really low quality of life. So what are the really like the low hanging fruit that you would say like everyone should really try and clean up or introduce to their life so that the macros and the training all actually works? Because it won't if sleep's trash, or it won't if you're having 72 ounces of coffee.
Yeah. So that's where I direct them to the lifestyle guideline, right? So like maybe listeners who've seen like the flow charts that a lot of us coaches put out, and kind of like, hey, if you've plateaued, check these things, right? If you haven't seen progress in 2 weeks, check these things. And for me, I always go back to those lifestyle guidelines. So if someone's coming to me, like I'll get this a lot of times with like people that ask like parents, or they want to help their parents. Like if my parents asking me for, guidance, I'm not going to coach them, and I'll obviously help answer questions and that sort of thing. But any coach knows that like it's that hard to coach your family and that sort of thing and create boundaries. But those lifestyle guidelines are enough. And if you can't get to them, it's always like, where are you now and what takes you one step closer to those guidelines? Because I believe that there's something everyone can accomplish. It's just whether or not like an example would be like for the movement one in the parasympathetic input is lifting heavy 3 times a week and then 8 to 10K steps a day. And I had a client ask me, she's like, hey, can we compromise on the 8K steps a day? And I'm like, and I said, look, we could, but like, what is it that's holding you back from that? And is it because she was already at 6,500 steps a day? It's like, it's a 15-minute walk, So just having that conversation is like, what can you get? What can you show me? Can you get 7,000 steps a day? Cool. We'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So was there any of these that were really hard for you initially, or that you had to learn and grow from?
Me personally doing those?
Yeah. That like
100.
maybe you were having 72 ounces of coffee, or maybe you know, your food quality was trash, but you're hitting your macros and you're just going, if it fits my macros, I'm good. Twinkie bars. What were like really the big ones for you?
Yeah. I, like all of them in some respect at some point. So for me, I'm super particular about sleep. And like sometimes, like being a business owner, being in the army, like that shit just takes a backseat, and you just have to deal. But at the same time, you can maximize your quality with a really good sleep environment and a really good routine and those sorts of things. And like, so trying to organize that in a way for other people who are also busy, on the go, type A driven, that sort of thing is like, okay, let's dial that in, because that's ultimately your nucleus. That's your focus. That's what everything kind of derives from. So let's get there first. Water has never been an issue. Quality of food and quantity, 100%. Like I would probably say that's been my biggest hurdle, like
I mean,
through everything ever.
pizza a day, right?
Yeah.
I'm guessing you've evolved beyond that, but is there anything still that like trips you up?
Yeah. So like, and every coach is going to be a little bit different. For the most part, what I think you'll hear from a lot of solid coaches is that you want to add to diets as much as possible. So instead of being like, no more pizzas, like let's add veggies, or whatever that means, or add water for hydration, make sure that you're feeling more satisfied, like those sorts of things add, right? But for me, like at some point you had to find a way to restrict in a way that was actually conducive. And so like that would be like pantry checks or making sure that like, hey, like is your environment conducive to you succeeding in this diet? And for me, that was huge. And so now I'm always like environmental, like you could call it like hygiene or positivity or whatever you want to call it. But that was a huge piece for me because I had the pizza a day diet, and my parents split when I was in high school, and I spent a lot of time at my dad's house, and he made actually like a lot of really solid like whole food meals, but like every dinner was like massive bowl of ice cream afterwards. And so like it's been a long journey to kind of like cut some of those like nutrient deficient foods out, but then bring them back in. So now every Sunday I have pizza, but I have half a pizza and have a huge, like I like to have shrimp and veggies and all that other stuff on the side. So it's not just like pizza binge time.
Yeah, that's really interesting because my dad worked for Pepsi for 26 years, and so you're like my dad's bringing home these like 2 liters of mug root beer and Sierra Mist and Mountain Dew and whatnot. And it was in college after I quit playing baseball where I was just like, I got to stop doing this. Like, this is not a good habit to be in where I'm having like multiple sodas. Obviously, we know how bad that is now, but the hygiene one is super interesting because if you think about it this way, it's like if you got trash laying around your house, like that's not a clean house. If you got trash laying around your kitchen, that is not a hygienical. Is that a word? I don't know. It's not high hygiene. You know what I mean?
I would,
From a
I would roll
nutrition.
with it
Yeah.
100%.
And so that's a really cool way to like pantry check. It's like you on maybe on the weekends or whatever day, like you clean your house or you clean your apartment. You also got to have, some cleaning from the refrigerator, the freezer, the pantry. And so I like it that you phrase it that way.
Dude, and I have to add this too because I think it really it depends on where you came from, but like my parents, we're about the same age, so I don't know if this was a similar experience for you too. But my parents, they're boomers, and my dad's parents specifically, they went through the depression, and so like they saved everything, right? My grandparents. And then my dad, he like took that to the next level where it was like he saved everything. And it was because that's what he learned as a child. So, like, whereas my grandparents, that was like a learned thing. For him, it was like a conditioned thing. And then for me, it started to like that was happening in my lifestyle. And what happens with that too is like you end up keeping stuff in your house because you don't want to waste it. And it literally took me sometimes being like, looking at the cereal box that like I wanted to eat the whole cereal box. Be like, I literally paid $2.50 for that. Like I can't throw like my health, my wellness, like my little mental health isn't worth throwing that 250 out. Like that's bullshit. So like I had to rewrite that story for myself. I'm like, do I still eat cereal today? Yeah, absolutely. But like in that moment when I was like feeling weaker or that I really needed that win for myself is like telling myself 250, you're worth more than that.
Yeah.
So
Dude, that's such a not you I mean, yeah, definitely unique perspective, but a really cool perspective and one that I'm just like I'm thinking like, wow, like is this how can I introduce this into what I do where it's like what condition patterns do you have as a child that is now still in your life, right? I had 3 siblings and so there's 6 of us at the table. As soon as a plate hits the table, it is like an antelope has just died and the lions need to go and get your fill while the getting is good. I literally the exact same thing. My grandparents survived the depression. My dad talks about how they save everything. And then if I were to go in my parents' pantry now, there's something from 2017 that we might use later. And I'm like, Mom, throw that out, throw it away, throw it away, throw it away. I go into the,
sneakily like take it yourself and just
I,
throw it out.
God bless my sister, but I remember her like cleaning the fridge out and it's like if there is anything growing on your food in your fridge, like that is a problem. That means that it's either not very good or it has been in there for a long time, right? And so all that to say is like how can we when we're thinking through like hey, what are my habits nutritionally? How many of these things are things that I've just learned, right? Maybe it's a roommate, maybe it's just I all of a sudden love these random Dorito things and I start eating these versus it's like I always buy this because as a kid I always bought this. Or here's another one. right? Memories are stored and we associate, maybe comfort with a memory. So you're having these binge sessions watching a TV show, and this food helps you relax because it helped you relax when you were 17 or 7 or whatever. Obviously, that gets beyond a little bit beyond the scope of work for us, but I think that's a really important thing. Anyone listening to this is like, what do I do now nutritionally? That is something that I've done since I was 6 years old. And is that still serving me? Because that's a story you're holding on to. I had this conversation with someone recently that was super cool to just frame it this way is the difference between like I can't fly, right? I know that that's an actual can't. Whereas someone is so tied to their identity, or it's like I can't not have my snack at night, or I can't, give up coffee, or I can't eat vegetables. It's like you can. It's not like you can't fly. You can do that. It's a story you've held on to for a really long time. Sorry. Anyway, I really like that you
No,
brought that up.
yeah, and I would add to it too, just because if there's someone listening to this and they're in that CrossFit or higher intensity type of training mindset too, a lot of times there is like, because sometimes we have to downgrade the intensity and we have to actually go from 6 days to 4 days a week, and or 5 days to three, or whatever it is, and take some of the classes away. And they're like, so you have me on this plan to create fat loss, but you want me to work out less. And it's like, it's going to be different for everyone, but it's like, well, yeah, you're sleeping 5 hours a night, like you feel like shit, like your bones hurt, like that's not normal, right? We'll get back to what normal feels like for 5 to 6 days of training a week after you can show me this other stuff, right? And so that's a big thing too that I ask is like, and this is the like, I love this like art of coaching style now, because what you were talking about before, it was like I can't eat vegetables, and then it's like, okay, if you know the personality of that person too, is like, cool, like I dare you to like, I dare you to eat vegetables. And then it's like, oh, do they fit into that category? Does that work with them or not? And like that's always like the fun part of coaching. But the other side is like, what can you do, which you ask, or show me, and like those are some of the most powerful things that if you're a coach, obviously it helps. But if you're just having this conversation with yourself in your head, your internal conflict, some good conversation to have.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. Tons of nuggets in here. One that I heard from another coach one time, where it's like, hey, we're gonna eat an extra 10 grams of protein. We're gonna walk an extra 1,000 steps, and we're gonna sleep an extra hour. And the client's like, that's easy. It's like, good. We should be able to do it and have no problems changing it up next week. And then it's like, getting them to say that's easy. Like, great.
Yes.
We have no problems doing it. You're in the National Guard, so I'll kind of touch on it this way. If you follow or listen to Jocko podcast, that's kind of just a assumption. But one of the things he talks about is, you let them come up with the plan, right? And so it's like, hey, we need to eat more vegetables. Vegetables are good because there's vitamins in them. How do you want to get your vegetables in, right? And that's a good leadership tactic, because then they're coming up with the plan, right? Or if that's someone you're, coaching, or you're someone you're managing, if they come up with the plan, it's like, great, that's your plan, run with it, and you got it. So just a couple more.
No, that's awesome. I love that. It's those like sneaky ways, right?
Yeah,
How can you?
exactly. To your point though, it is the art of coaching, and what's, again, stuff that I feel like we really connect on is the cerebral part of it, and the science is always going to be there, but until the mindset or the mind just wraps around what needs to happen, science doesn't matter.
Yeah, 100%. And like the sometimes it takes that rewiring too, where it's like, I don't know what this looks like for you and your clients. I mean, like I always see you as a very upbeat and positive and like funny and like entertaining person, with a lot of power in the education element as well. And then like, so for me, I try to bring that sort of positivity and a little bit of some of that like raw humor, because you have, or drier humor, because a lot of times we have people with this just horrible self-talk, and that kind of branches off what you were just talking about there. And side note, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but Mark England's core language upgrade, it's like a 3-week course, and it was incredible. It's like he does an amazing job of just simplifying the physicality of language. So he kind of breaks it down. It's been a while since I did it, but I still bring up tactics from it every single day with all of my clients. And I'll actually get picky with them too. Like if they're emailing to me and they're like, oh, today this week was okay, but like I only hit my protein goal 5 days this week, and then I'll be like, okay, let's take a look at this sentence and then take a look at what you did last week. Was that one more day that you hit your protein goal than the week before? So let's think about how we can say this differently to arm yourself as a very capable person, because right now your mind is telling a different story than you're living, and ultimately that's going to be how that's going to determine your satisfaction with it.
Yeah, dude, that's another good one. Language. I had to email someone who's like, I guess I'll start tracking, and I got to be more restrictive with my diet. I'm like, restrictive? No. Consistent? Yes. Two different words, two different like emotions and memories with it.
Yeah.
Dude, lots of really, really cool tips. I want to switch gears just a little bit and get to know you just a little bit more as we wind the podcast down. But obviously, we've all been locked in. Remind me where you're at in the country.
Arizona, just west
Arizona.
of Phoenix. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm actually going to Scottsdale in a week and a half. I don't know when people listen to this podcast, but if you're close to that, we'll connect off the podcast. But anyway, we've been locked up, and one of the things that I miss a ton is concerts, shows, just getting out and listening to music. So let's say like everything ends, you can go to a concert right now. Like, what concert are you going to? Like, are you bringing buddies, your wife? Like, what's the situation here?
Yeah, so awesome question. Actually, this one has a lot of feels because literally the day before Milwaukee got shut down, first off, Pfizer Forum was the new like arena. It was for the Bucks to play in, and but it's also a concert venue. And so the day before it got shut down, like all the news was coming out, but like no shutdowns. The Lumineers were in town, and so we went to go see the Lumineers. Yep, my wife and I were there, and we are like, oh, should we go? Like, not sure. And that was like literally our last official like date night out before everything shut down. And it came up kind of like in our memories, whatever it was, like a month ago, right? Because that was like about the 1 year mark. And so I would love to go there, but they're from Colorado. And so, like, for me, ideal would be like go see them at Red Rocks with my wife. That would be baller.
That would be sick. Every time my girlfriend will have friends come over, we'll just have friends come over, and we just throw up like concerts on the TV and we'll watch
Oh,
concerts. And I'm just like, wow, like we're dancing to old concerts or old music. I'm like, I want to do this so bad. And right before we left, this is just a random artist. I like Zara Larson, but I was like, hey, we should go to Zara Larson. She was at UW, which is close where we're at in Seattle. And she's like, whatever. And now we're like looking back, like, I would go see anyone right now live. like, I like a eclectic amount of music, but literally anyone. But Lumineers is a good call, and I don't know. Hopefully soon, right?
I know, man. Fingers crossed. We always just kind of like check and see what's going on, and there's live music every once in a while. It's like you just catch yourself like gravitating towards wherever the music is playing if it's live. So
Yep, 100%. Cool. Last question. You get to interview anyone on our podcast, alive, dead, fictional, non-fictional, right? So we can go a wide array of people here. Who would you interview?
well, I had my pick until you added the fictional or non-fictional, but I'll still stick with it because I like to I like to keep the fictional characters where I think they are and have my own kind of like understanding of them.
Kind of like
And I also
heroes. Like you don't want to meet your hero.
That's exactly
Yeah.
100%, which also makes this one a little bit questionable. But Dwayne Johnson, I mean, that's just a dude who's just like he's done so much. And I don't know about this whole like political run that's going on, but I won't even touch on that. Just Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah. Which stage, which era of Johnson is your favorite?
It's got to be like I would say right now, but I honestly feel like interviewing him right now, it would be like, he's like, I don't know the guy. He looks like he's busy. I feel like it would probably not be a very present conversation, but I feel like he started to really, really like kick off his like comedy acting career and sort of, and like a little bit more of the creativity with Jumanji and Moana. So like sometime around those two, because now he's singing, now he's voice acting, doing things a little bit differently, and like taking more of that creative edge versus just being the Jack dude. So I would love to, yeah, I think that would be awesome.
Yeah,
That
the
timing.
guy's got so much going on from movies to his tequila. He's in Moana, he's in Jumanji, he's in Fast and Furious. Obviously, he's got all the football and that would be like a fun one is just to like do like 30 minutes of the Rock interview and then just
Right.
like and then fast forward and it's like, hey, what's up, Moana, Dwayne Johnson, and just kind of like see how he's changed because I agree that would be a fascinating interview.
I'm
But
looking at Terramana tequila too. It's delicious. I don't know if you've had it before, but it's sitting here.
no,
So
it makes sense that yeah, that you'd be into that. Is what's your favorite Dwayne Johnson movie?
oh man. Um what was the one I was thinking? Honestly, I mean, I'm the type of person that I like to have a favorite. I'm really, really particular if I didn't give that off before, but it's like, like Pain and Gain is action and comedy. And I love comedy, right? And then Moana is like super creative, and I love all the Disney movies and that sort of thing. Jumanji's good, but um, yeah, I mean, I'll probably put it at Jumanji. I don't know. It's just the day that I'm having now. I'll probably change
Yeah,
it tomorrow.
changes tomorrow.
Yeah.
I remember the lines that he would have. I forget the actor's name. He's the British one that's married to Rosie Huntington Whiteley in I think Fast Five, where he's like, you better not get out of prison or I'll beat you up. He's like, yeah, well you can't because you're locked in. And it's just like the one liners that him and this guy, it's the British dude, right? The one who's always escaping. He's in Transporter. You know what I'm talking about?
Statham.
Yeah, Jason Statham.
Yeah.
The lines that they were saying to each other were just hilarious. They were so
Yes.
bad, but it's because these two guys were saying them to each other that I think about that now. And I need to watch that scene because it was hilarious. Anyway,
Yeah.
dude, thank you so much for coming on. Tons of really cool like mind nuggets, right? And
Yeah.
I think if people can write down one or two and just think like, man, like how am I eating how I used to when I was a kid? Like that could be life changing in and of itself. But just want to thank you for your time and look forward to connecting with you more in the future, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, man.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
All right. Before I let you guys go, just want to say thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed the podcast, I'd appreciate it. Leave a 5-star rating and review. Help me grow the podcast. We're almost at 100 episodes. And so this is a real thing. Episode a week, 2 years running. I think we'll hit 2 years in June. And so it's just been a really fun ride. And every time I get feedback, whether it's through social media, through the ratings, reviews, it's all helpful and helping me make a better show for you. And if you're like, man, this is my vibe, definitely subscribe to the podcast as well and tag Chaz and I and let us know that you're listening so that we can interact and engage with you. Other than that, have an awesome week. We'll catch you guys next time on the Mindful Muscle Podcast.